He's a young singer from Memphis, Tennessee. Give him a warm hayride welcome, Mr. Elvis Presley.
Get a haircut, buttercup.
In that moment, I watched that skinny boy transform into a superhero.
You've longed for it. Or maybe even dreaded it. Just a little. We talked about it way back in episode number 2. And now, it is here. Baz Luhrmann's Elvis is upon us. So this is the Elvis episode.
Old movies for young stoners. Old movies for young stoners. With Bob Calhoun and his friends. Should I smoke this spliff and watch Montgomery Cliff, or should I smoke a bong and watch King Kong?
Elvis Presley was the king of rock and roll, but can he conquer dubstep? Baz Luhrmann's Elvis is hitting multiplexes on June 24th to help us find out with all of Baz's trademark anachronisms. To prepare you, we've got the real Elvis as a surly carny, singing his way to success in Roustabout from 1964.
And for our second feature, we go from light musical entertainment to the dark underbelly of America in The World's Greatest Sinner, a wickedly subversive passion project from the man who drove Marlon Brando to stab him with a pencil, Timothy Carey.
All that and a very special guest who you won't want to miss right here on Old Movies for Young Stoners.
Thank you for joining us on the epic 8th episode of Old Movies for Young Stoners. I am your co-host, Bob Calhoun, author of The Murders That Made Us, and joining me are Corey Sklar of the Hollywood Punk Rock Graveyard Tour, Felina Franklin, appearing in Chippendale Rescue Rangers, now streaming on Disney+, and Greg Franklin of 6 Point Harness Studios.
There's another interesting guest we have on the show. Now, you know, there are lots of Elvis impersonators. But here is the one and only Mexican Elvis impersonator. His name is Elvez. E-L-V-E-Z. Not only is he a Mexican impersonator of Elvis Presley, but claims that he is the only love child between Elvis and Charo. Says this happened in 1960 and so on. Of course, Elvis has very little to say about this.
Who can dispute this?
And we haven't heard from Charo.
As a founding member of the Zeros, he helped formulate classic punk hits like Beat Your Heart Out, quickly shifted gears to the synth-Latin art damage of Catholic discipline, as featured in The Decline of Western Civilization, Part 1. By the late 80s, though, he developed a flamboyant and nuanced new identity, Elvez, that mixed visionary tactics, fiery politics, Mexican-American Chicano pride, subversive pop culture appropriation, queer sensibilities, and a campy humor of Las Vegas-style proportions. He is able to effortlessly fuse being a rebel-rousing performance artist with being a swooning singer. His gusto, intelligence, and charm remain magnetic and unmatched, whether in his bands Bobby and the Pins, Trailer Park Casanovas, and the Little Richards, or as Mr. Bob, catch him on tour this July on the West Coast with yours truly, that's right, with me, the guy that does the theme song to this very podcast. We're in LA at Zebulon on the 7th of July. We are in San Diego at the Casbah on 8th of July. And on the 9th of July, we are in Joshua Tree at First World. How lucky are we to have Robert Lopez, everybody, on the Elvis episode. Welcome, Robert. How are you doing this morning?
Hello, good morning.
Tell me your relationships with these Elvis movies. Did you grow up with them, or did you not see them till later when you were studying Elvis for Elvez? Like, what's your deal with these Elvis movies?
I grew up with Elvis.
in the 70s early, you would probably see them, some of the early ones on TV in black and white at home, maybe. I never went into a theater and saw Elvis movies, but I would see them on TV. And then later I would see the ones I've missed on the beta or the VHS tapes that people had way back then.
Well,
I grew up with Elvis stuff, but I didn't hone in until 88 when I became Elvis, but it was always around there. It was in the peripherals, and I was just sucking it up like a sponge to use later and subverse later in my later years.
well, there's 31 of these things. I can't believe how many Elvis movies there are. Are any of them good?
It all depends what you think is good. There you go. It became formulaic after a while, but it's great to see him in his youth. King Creole is pretty good. It has some great cinematography, great songs, and great oddity. Carolyn Jones, who was Morticia Adams, is in it. It's a good one. That one has some real good cinematography that makes him look really great.
Do you think that he had acting chops? Do you think he had what it takes to be a star? Because one thing that I find so weird is out of these 31 movies, they did become formulaic. No one ever came and like said, let's make a serious vehicle with Elvis, like a Scorsese or a Bob Rafelson maybe in the 70s or something. You know what I mean? It's surprising. He was slotted to be the first, the second, almost the third. The Barbara Streisand Star is Born. And Colonel Tom fought for the billing. He was supposed to be Elvis, although Barbara Streisand was producing it, everything. She was going to get top billing. And Colonel Tom said, nope, my boy's not doing it unless he gets top billing for this movie. So he did have an inkling to be into more serious movies. I think Elvis, 33 movies that's a career, wouldn't you say? Good or bad acting. Yeah. But I think he was one of the first of, we have a star, let's put them in this, which became a thing later. You know, it's like, they don't have the best acting talent, let's do it and run with it. And that became a norm nowadays for reality TV or hosting or anything like that. But he did have a charisma of presentation as via his stage, so he was ahead of the game. But he had a career, so if it was good is debatable. Yeah, this is my first Elvis movie that I just wasn't flipping through and then like just passed through, and I really sat down and watched it. He is so likable. He's like you're drawn to him so much. He is so beautiful, and even these songs in this one that we watched Roustabout for this episode, they're forgettable songs, but they're still hot. The band's hot, and he's singing his ass off, and it's still good. I don't remember any of them, but they're really good songs, you know.
And so let's do that again in Hawaii. Let's do that again in Las Vegas. Let's do that again in Mexico. And so it became that, but he looked great locale, great women, great outfits now. I'm sure there were great outfits then. It's just like there's enough and enjoyable things to latch on to.
Do you think, Elvis, like, you know, when you were growing up, when I was growing up, Elvis is this, even after his death, he's this pillar, this centerpiece of American pop culture. Do you think that we are drifting away as a nation from Elvis? Is Elvis just further and further back?
Yes. No, he was the sacrificial lamb with the whole prescription drug kind of idea. That was before rehab. Just imagine if he went to rehab and he was before the fall and come back again. Here's your second chance. America wants you back on People magazine and all that stuff. Since he was a pillar, was one of the ideas of Elvis was, okay, let's change that pillar. Who else can share that pillar? Let's share the faulty undergrounds of that pillar, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, he was a pillar, and now I've forgotten what you said again.
Well, it's funny. We're moving away from it. I don't know if young people know who Elvis is, and this Baz Luhrmann, this Baz Luhrmann thing. I think Baz is making this to like, I'm going to teach people who Elvis is, as we get farther away from him. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what the reaction is. I don't see a lot of young people going to see this movie, though.
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann does mash up things. That's what I love about him is how much mashup. So this movie does have mixings of culture and songs and all that stuff. It mixes it in and shows references if you're smart enough to know what the references are. I've worked with Elvis Presley Enterprises a few times, and they do have a plan. And this is like every 10 years, let's do a new remake or let's re-energize. And Baz Luhrmann is part of their, let's do this for 2022 rehash. And things funny, like they have just clamped down on Elvis impersonators. Hey, Vegas Elvis impersonators who wed people, you have to stop using the images of Elvis to be that. And so every once in a while they try to get relevant again and say, let's present Elvis. And so they have a strategy of time, which is smart because he will become less and less of a public eye. But become a character as Marilyn Monroe, just a James Dean. It's something I know. I saw this picture of him. And so it's like, wow, the whole glory isn't there, but it's an icon image.
But isn't being married by the king relevant? I mean, that those people are being married by Elvis. It's the most important moment of their lives.
Yes, it's sort of linked to Americans' past culture through the present of Las Vegas.
I never thought of an estate like they have a product roadmap for somebody's legacy. You know what I mean? It's interesting to think about that way.
I mean, that's just free advertising, right? All those Elvis.
You would think, yeah, you would think. But it's also the idea of we want to keep our image pure and clean of drugs.
It's so like the legacy
drug test all the Elvis impersonators and make sure that they're all.
And there's a collection of their pee.
That's a fetish for sure.
Yes. That costs extra. But yeah, it used to be when I first started Elvisizing in '88. In Memphis at the Elvis Tribute Week, which is the great Dia de los Muertos of sorts of the anniversary of his death, there used to be all these homemade pop-up shops of Elvis fan stuff, crocheted, fly swatters, homemade things. And then they were the most wonderful things made out of folk art love for Elvis. Mm-hmm. And slowly Elvis Presley Enterprise clamped down on them because no, you cannot do this. We're stopping now. We want to limit the images. But at one point, it was just like a cacophony of good, terrible, and wonderful homemade stuff that they said, we want to streamline what Elvis represent, what images use, which is how you create a legacy. But the homemade stuff is, to me, folk art. It's like what Elvis is a homemade version of what your tribute to something is, blemishes and all.
Did they ever come after you?
No, I'm really lucky. Priscilla even said, oh yeah, we like Elvis because he leaves us alone, because a lot of them get really clingy and say, oh, how are you going to help me with my next? They go, Elvis does what he does and he leaves us. And I've done things with him. I performed at Lisa Marie Jett. They had a 5K run and they asked me to perform. They opened the Elvis restaurant in Memphis that was going to be like their foray into the Hard Rock cafes, and they asked me to perform there. So I've done a couple things, and one of the best things is someone who worked for them says, half of us love you and half of us hate you. And I said, oh, that's the most perfect place to be.
I got excited for a second because I thought there was an Elvis restaurant. And I really wanted...
There's three Elvis restaurants. There's one in Manhattan.
That's amazing.
One in Philadelphia and one in Fort Lauderdale. It's a licensing deal. Star Productions has these great restaurants throughout the East Coast, and we got a licensing deal. And
amazing. Do they have like peanut butter and banana enchiladas?
No, but they do have an Elvis peanut butter banana dessert named after me. They're not shrines to me, but they're named. I've performed there sometimes. I've DJ'd. I've done events there. So it's nice to have a restaurant after you.
Try the fried squirrel tacos. Very.
Robert, I always wanted to ask you before I let you go, was there ever a point where you're just like, fuck all this Elvis shit, I am done, I am Elvised out, I never want to see another movie or hear another song again? Or has it always been able to separate it?
Well, during the first month, I started Elvis because I worked at La Luz de Jesus and I curated a show all on Elvis. And so every day we'd had a couple independent films on Elvis screening, Elvis music all day long. Real hardcore Elvis fans would hang out all day long. And 15 days into the 31 days of Elvis submersion, I go, I'm either going to hate Elvis at the end of this month or all the way. And here I am 32 or plus years later. So I guess I joined the cult. And you can too. Just sign up to.
I'm in there. I'm in their cult now. So yeah, we're excited for the Baz Luhrmann movie, but we're even more excited because Robert is bringing his legendary annual Christmas show. It got canceled this Christmas, so he's bringing it to you in July, everybody. So don't miss the shows.
Yes.
We're in LA at Zebulon on the 7th of July. We are in San Diego at the Casbah on 8th of July. And on the 9th of July, we are in Joshua Tree at First World. We are so excited to see. Bob, you went to the only Christmas show that was able to happen last year. So you are very lucky.
Yeah. And I'm going to the one in San Diego. Rosie and I will be in San Diego that week by coincidence. So we will be at the Casbah.
That Casbah's always great. That's my hometown. So I always have good shows.
Awesome.
God, Bob, you're following Elvis around like the goddamn Grateful Dead or something.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get you one of the sweaters. Gabba Gabba, one of us. Gabba Gabba Ray.
Screw this Elvis shirt. I need an Elvis cult sweater.
Yes.
Well, Robert, you are the best in the game, and we are so lucky to have you on this episode to talk a little bit about Elvis. We really appreciate it, and I'll see you in July.
See you. Enjoy your Elvis movies.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Mwah. Love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Pues un botanero. Para la show, estamos listos. Arriba, 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 perdón. Pisos mis borrachos azules. No. Pues haz lo que quieres, no pisos mis borrachos azules. Pues pégame a cachetada. Toca my shoes and you'll be sorry. I'm messing my hair all covered with moves. Rapping off of them shoes, perdón. Pisos mis borrachos azules. No. Pues haz lo que quieres, no pisos mis borrachos. I feel like dancing.
That Chippendales Rescue Rangers is so great, Felina, and you're so great in it. So I just watched it. I loved it so much.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I still haven't seen it, so I need to.
I laughed and laughed. I was so high, and I laughed and laughed and laughed the whole time.
Yeah, it looks like one that you gotta get high for. It was really cool too, because we got to like walk around and see all of the like weird booths in person, like the ugly Sonic booth and so there were so many really cool ones that like really didn't even get pictured. I wish I could like fully remember what they were, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about Disney productions is they really put the detail into the things that no one ever gets to see.
Oh yeah.
But it's a fun movie, way better than Space Jam 2, which I know is damning with faint praise, but you know, as they're similar movies, and you know, we enjoyed watching it. I would watch it again if I get that stoned again. I will. We should. You know what? We're missing an opportunity. What weed would you smoke with Chippendale Rescue Rangers? Which would probably make it our most popular episode because that's what people really need to know.
Yes, that's what they need to know.
The weed I smoked when I was on set was
Elvis, getting the chicks all worked up, but cutting loose from any dolly who can tie him down. Until he meets the one girl who can tie him up.
You better leave, Charlie, please.
Why? Because it was good?
Because it isn't right for me. I'm not a one-night stand.
Hiya, 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 the big show is about to begin. He's back, he's ready, and here he is now.
It's Elvis Presley, freewheeling, free-swinging on the Carnival Midway, where there's girls galore, the main attraction for any two-fisted roustabout.
Hey! What are you doing?
What's the matter?
Come on, look back.
Oh, you want to
No. Don't be funny.
Elvis, shilling and shouting as he starts roustabouting, strumming and humming till the crowds start coming to the girl shows and the sideshows.
In our first feature, Elvis is a motorcycle riding, karate chopping, rock and roll rebel who falls in with a traveling carnival. No woman or job can keep the king tied down, but only his singing can keep the carnival from being bought out by a sideshow conglomerate. Can Carny Queen, Miss Barbara Stanwyck, or Kathy, the more age-appropriate love interest played by Joan Freeman, convince Elvis to stop being a dick and save the show? Also featuring Richard Kiel as the strongman, Teri Garr as a cooch dancer, and the immortal Billy Barty. From 1964, this is Roustabout. Now, guys, watching this again, you can't convince me that there wasn't something going on behind the scenes between Miss Barbara Stanwyck and Elvis Presley.
I didn't get that for some reason. But it's funny to see Barbara Stanwyck in this movie because she's acting circles around everybody else in the movie. Her acting ability looms so large in this movie compared to the guy who's playing her husband, the drunk, and the daughter, and even Elvis himself. So this is my first Elvis movie I've ever seen, and I was so into it for a while, and then like he's so likable. He has that thing that like The Rock has or Bruce Campbell has or something where he's just like really shines on screen and is really a smart ass and it's fun to watch. And then when I realized he's a carny, I'm like, here we go, carnival time, woohoo. But that was a wasted opportunity to show some really low down dark carny shit. You know, we could have seen like chicken fights, all sorts of things. So
it was very sanitized. It was a very sanitized view of the carny life.
I did like the cameos from the carnival workers, the sword swallower, the bearded lady. I like that. I like the freak stuff. But I'll tell you, maybe Felina, I'd like to hear what you think because I was so excited for this movie for a while. It's so beautiful, the Technicolor, Barbara Stanwyck, all the great cameos. The music is hot. That band is cooking. But after a while, I like hit a wall with this shit, and I got so bored. And I'm like, oh, it's so long. I fucking hate Elvis. But what do you think?
I had a really fun time throughout most of it. The end did like drag on, especially watching it on Pluto with like the stupidest ads in between. This one commercial kept coming on. It was like the same commercial, like multiple times. Yeah. It was for Bear Paint. And it was like the old person who lives in your apartment because you haven't painted your apartment. And it's like, no, no, that's not how it works.
Targeted advertising. They're selling paint to people watching Elvis movie, which is like watching paint dry.
Zing.
Despite the paint commercials, you did have a good time with this though.
Oh, I had a whole lot of fun with this. I will say the scariest part was when the clown showed up twice. It was awful. That's but it was so good. I mean, I'm a theater kid. I love musicals. All of the musical numbers were good except for the weird racist Egyptian one. But I had so much fun, like vibing, listening to him singing a song on his motorcycle, singing a song on a Ferris wheel, singing a song on at the throwing balls area.
He sings so much in this movie. Yeah, so much. But I agree. True. The music is cool, and the songs are awesome. Even though like I don't remember any of them. I remember the one where he's like he's driving down the highway and he's talking about rolling down the highway. And I remember the carnival one because he sings it a couple times. And then you just reminded me of the Egyptian one. But I know there was no recognizable Elvis songs, which was interesting. But I guess he's 31 movies. Right. There's going to be so much music.
I liked that still.
Me too. I liked. I loved the music.
Well, that's part of the reason I chose it is like these movies become more watchable the more songs there are in them. So this one has 11 songs, but the ones that have like 8 or 9 just somehow like Blue Hawaii, which has some of his more memorable Elvis hits in it, but it just seems like the time between songs is way too long. Where this movie, as does Fun in Acapulco, which was the other choice, where we are stuck in 60s Elvis. Now, we touched on it a little bit with Elvis, with Robert, where the 50s Elvis movies are pretty good. Like, I wished that Jailhouse Rock or King Creole, which is Elvis Noir, it has Carolyn Jones in it. It's very much like Purple Rain in a way, which Purple Rain is basically an Elvis movie. There's these mob bosses fighting over Elvis's singing, like he's the commodity that they're fighting over. And Walter Matthau is like the big bad in that movie. He's the like Don Corleone of New Orleans jazz clubs.
That one sounds awesome. This did make me want to watch more Elvis movies, like Godzilla. That Godzilla movie did. So this show has made me a Godzilla and an Elvis fan. Look at that.
I also kind of understand where like the hype around him is like before. I remember watching like one Elvis movie when I was like 11 and being like, this guy sucks. Like this guy's so boring. But watching this, I was like, Elvis is cool. Elvis,
he's so cool. I agree.
He's so cool. He's like suave and he's kind of cute, which I don't like.
Oh, he's so beautiful. I think he's so beautiful.
I don't like that he's so pretty.
Yeah, when he sort of impishly steals the showering women's towels and plays keep away with a little person who joins in the fun. What a great guy.
Oh my
I think it would be. I think I would have much more fun with this movie if he wasn't such a dick. If he was more likable. It is hard to watch him.
You could only be a dick though in the 50s. There's nothing to do.
Your options are limited.
I was looking up some of the songs in Roustabout and I noticed that the problematic Egyptian song Little Egypt that Felina brought up was actually written by Lieber and Stoller, who wrote so many of the huge hits of the 20th century, including Hound Dog and things like that. I noticed one of the other ones was co-written by Dolores Fuller, who is famous for portraying Ed Wood's girlfriend in Glen or Glenda.
Well, Dolores Fuller, she was married to Ed Wood, and she's played by Sarah Jessica Parker in the Tim Burton movie. But there's a reason for that. She wrote a few songs for Elvis in these movies, but Colonel Tom Parker had this rule where if you wrote a song for Elvis, they got half of the publishing. So after a while, you don't this is maybe the last Lieber and Stoller song that Elvis did, which I actually like Little Egypt. I know it's problematic, but and also in the movie, there's this terrible kazoo horn sound in it that isn't in the album version. Like the album version rips. It's like a different mix. But after a while, because of this rule, you don't have the good songwriters wanting to write for Elvis anymore. So you end up with Dolores Fuller and you end up with Graham, and that becomes a problem for the movies. It's really
that's true.
I read an interview with Dolly Parton where she was talking about how Elvis wanted one song. I can't remember what it was, but she ended up turning it down because she's like, and she had a hit with it herself and other people had hits with it, but she was like, I can't do this. This is my song. Nobody else is asking.
Right.
31 movies. I can't fucking believe it. 31 movies. I might do an endurance testing and watch all 31. I'm thinking about it because there's got to be some kind of gold in there somewhere. Bob, is there a really nice presentation of these movies, in a box set or something, or has that never been done?
I can only think of I have a VHS box set of some of these in the garage. I don't know if they've done those or if Paramount has done this. There's one which is kind of a white whale. It's Loving You. It's one of the 50s ones. And it is, it's disappeared. It's not on Pluto. It's not on Paramount Plus. It's not on, it's on a DVD from 20 years ago. And that's one's kind of a little noirish. It's got Elizabeth Scott, who, if anybody here like Greg and me, she turns up in a lot of film noirs. It's got another noir guy, and it's got Teddy Bear in it. It's got a lot of 50s hits.
I like that one.
Baby.
I need to know how the fuck I missed Teri Garr in this. I'm as a child of the 80s, I am a Teri Garr super fan. I've loved all of her Letterman appearances. I would always make sure to tape. I absolutely adore her. Talk about missed opportunities. I imagine a parallel universe where she is the lead of Roustabout, knowing what a great actress she is. How awesome would that have been?
Well, who was she? Was she one of the dancers at the carnival? Is that who she was?
she's shaking her butt, and she's like 18 or 19 or something, and you mostly see her from behind. That's why you probably missed her. And
the cameos in this movie are so cool. I mean, Barbara Stanwyck is in a cameo, but she's awesome. I was surprised to see Billy Barty, because he was alive when I was little and he looked like an old man. And then this is like way before and he still looked like it. Like it was just, did Billy Barty ever look young?
He was 18 too in this movie.
Shaking his butt.
Yeah, he's shaking. Richard Kiel is shaking his butt as well. Doesn't Elvis toss Billy Barty to Richard Kiel at the end of the movie?
Yes, I think he does.
Yeah, Raquel Welch is apparently in this.
Whoa.
As one of the college girls as well, which I also have to say, one of my favorite songs in here was Poison Ivy League, which was such a great diss track. And the funniest thing about it was like this song is basically a roast of some of the frat boys in the audience. And the whole time he's getting the audience to laugh at them. But at the same time, he's making this like really deadly eye contact with them as he's singing these diss lyrics. It's extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's the opening scene in the movie. And it's a great scene. I was like, it set me up for something totally different than what this movie ended up being. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And he beats him up with karate.
Yeah.
Beats him up with the karate in the beginning. It's like almost like a James Bond beginning, where James Bond is always beginning like with some unfinished business that you're dropped in before we get to the rest of the whatever's going on in this movie.
It's interesting that Elvis gets into a lot of fights in this movie, and like he kind of the fights never like happen really. Like they always kind of, I guess the one with the Ivy Leaguers do, but I wonder if that's a choice. Like we can't show Elvis fighting people or something like that, you know?
He beat up a lot of people. Beat up the dad a couple of times.
Oh yeah, he beat up the dad. That's true.
The dad also did attempt to murder him. So
that's crazy. Yeah, definitely could have killed him. That's could have been a deadly accident. The motorcycle.
Oh my god, that was so scary. When I was watching it, I was like fully cringing.
So, Felina, what kind of weed were you smoking to make you like so concerned about Elvis being run off the road?
Well, I was smoking. At the time, I was smoking an indica, and then I smoked a different indica in the middle because this movie is long, and
it's 90 minutes.
It feels really?
Yeah, 100 minutes.
Pluto definitely adds to the runtime. Pluto, Pluto made this movie feel like 7 years. I was smoking Grande Guava. This is a pretty like mid THC level indica. It's nice. It made me feel buzzy, but I wasn't like too stoned, which was nice. And then I had Double Stuffed by Old Pal Flower.
Very good value, Old Pal.
This made me feel a lot higher than the Grande Guava. So I feel like as it went on, I felt like I was slowly getting more and more stoned, which I think added to the level.
Probably helped.
Yeah, definitely helped. So I feel like if I were to watch this over again, I would smoke a hybrid during the commercials, like a Stizzy hybrid during all of the Pluto commercial breaks.
I smoked a lemon haze shatter in my device, which is this crazy electric bong. It smokes the weed for you.
Nice.
You know, and yeah, it's pretty much like punches you right in the noggin and makes you feel like you have rocks on your head the whole time, which is awesome for this film. I wanted to be, and I didn't watch it on Pluto. I bit the bullet and spent $2.99 and rented it from Mr. Bezos. But you know, it was worth the $3. I'm old and I don't have time for paint commercials. So
nice.
That's the way to watch. That was the way to watch for me.
Doing this podcast is exciting for me because I get to not only discover great cinema, but I get to try a bunch of new products at the dispensary. And Stizzy has new disposable pens, and I got this one. It's indica. It's called Blueberry, and it tastes so good. It's like blueberry, and it's only like $26. They're super cheap. But this thing is like a heavy indica. And I was so into this movie. I was so into this movie. I loved the colors. I loved the music. And then as it kept going on, I kept getting higher. And then by the 10th time, he's going like, it's carnival time. It's a roustabout. We're roustabouting around the roustabout, singing about popcorn and shit. I'm like, okay, man, I'm hitting a wall with this. So I would suggest something buzzier. So probably get a sativa, one of these Stizzy new disposables. I'll tell you what they have for in sativa. They have Orange Sunset, Blue Dream, Strawberry Cough, Sour Tango, Sour Tangy, Premium Jack, Sour Diesel. So try one of those.
And by the way, I just want to ask, the job description for being a roustabout is apparently putting two benches on a Ferris wheel and then just wandering around the fairgrounds, just flirting with the fortune teller and doing fucking jack shit. So that's the job that when I grow up, I want to be a roustabout for sure.
Don't forget, he also sold 2 Cracker Jacks.
He does kind of need to go to the Roustabout sexual harassment workshop.
No, carny law is different. They don't have our human laws.
Okay, Roustabout is now streaming for free with ads on Pluto. Lots of paint ads, I hear. And you could rent it from Prime or Google for $2.99.
From Hollywood, it's the Steve Allen Show. From the Steve Allen Playhouse on Pine Street in the heart of Hollywood, we bring you 90 minutes of madness and melody with guest stars Mel Torme, Jenny Smith, songwriter Sammy Fain, log roller Diane Ellison, musical bicyclist Frank Zappa, Don Brenner and his orchestra, yours truly, Johnny J.
Steve, we not only have the prettiest girls in the audience here at the Steve Allen Show, but also you'll have to admit some of the strangest musical instruments. And this gentleman plays perhaps the strangest of them all. He plays the bicycle, and his name is Frank Zappa. Thank you.
And might we be familiar with any of your songs as yet?
Well, you will be familiar with some of my songs as of next week, but I did the score for The World's Greatest Sinner.
And who might that be? Tommy Manville or who? Tell us about that.
That's the name of the film. It's the world's worst movie, and I did the music for it.
The World's Greatest Sinner?
Yes. It's a Tim Carey production, Frenzy Productions.
Frenzy Productions.
It's an independent company.
They all are these days, the way things are going. But
they shot at Mel Monte.
So they shot my agent Mel Monte. You know, that could happen to anybody. Who was in it?
Tim Carey and a cast of 1,000 people that he found down on Main Street someplace.
Heartbreak Hotel was released in 1956 and propelled its previously dirt poor singer, Elvis Presley, into a kind of superstardom the world had not yet seen. The power that this gyrating hillbilly swinging hips had on America's teenage girls sent Eisenhower voting squares into a panic, and wasn't lost on Timothy Carey, an intense character actor who stole his few scenes in Stanley Kubrick's The Killing and Paths of Glory and just about any other film he was in, despite delivering all of his lines through tightly clenched teeth. In 1957, while Elvis was filmed from the waist up on TV variety shows, Carey began directing and producing his run-and-gun passion project, where he plays Clarence Hilliard, a bored insurance salesman who uses rock and roll to become a cult leader and declare himself a god. 5 years later, the surreal yet documentary-like results were released as our next film, The World's Greatest Sinner.
I love Timothy Carey. In everything I've seen him in, and I've always wanted to see this. I've always heard about it, and I first heard about it when I watched that Frank Zappa clip of him on the Steve Allen Show when he's a teenager, and he said, "I just composed music for the worst movie ever made." I'm like, "Oh, I got to see that one." But I love Timothy Carey in The Killing, and I love him. He does this great monologue in the Cassavetes movie, Minnie and Moskowitz, and it's so good. And he's such a weirdo. And I really recommend anyone to see that. So I was so excited to watch this. And it starts off with, you hear Paul Frees's voice, Tony the Tiger, the voice of the ghost host at Haunted Mansion. And so that's exciting. Mars and Beyond. Right. He's Paul Frees is a regular. And it was really exciting. And it does start off with that like Ed Wood kind of feel, like, wow, this is so homemade. But it also feels like John Cassavetes movies in a way. Like it's just, it's very I don't know. It has that aesthetic, that sensibility of just like the way these guys in LA that were just making movies at their house. They did it. They made him feel a certain way that other movies don't feel like. So it was interesting. It's a difficult one. What did you think, Felina?
So I really liked the movie. I hated him, but that just means that it was successful. Because I absolutely despised this Morrissey ass looking guy. He looks like he listens to Morrissey, at least. But he's so ugly and he gets with so many women. I can't understand this word he's saying because he's always talking like this.
The audio is so bad in this movie.
The audio is awful. The whole production is heinous, and he is heinous to look at.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. I feel like the story is awesome. The story is so cool, and I really loved like watching it. Despite all of the production flaws and or quirks, I should say, because I don't know. This movie's quirky and funny and stupid.
It's so stupid. I was gonna say it's so stupid. Like it's like it's so heavy-handed and it's stupid messaging. Like he's literally standing on a pile of bullshit. Do you see it? And like he has a snake. The snake, it's a snake. Like him. Do you get it? And it's like, yes, we get it. The only thing that makes it stand out is its weird production, and his acting is so weird. I mean, it's like Nicolas Cage level crazy.
He is like what Nicolas Cage has been ripping off for most of his career.
That really hit me on as I was watching it for this show, is that like his Timothy Carey was a powerhouse of an actor, and that's what makes this movie a notch above something that was like an Ed Wood movie, we'll say. You know what I mean? I recommend watching this movie with friends and maybe some movie nerds and like people who are into weird cult movies, because this is a significant one.
You know what's one thing that strikes me, and this is like coming from a guy who just wrote or published a true crime book, a San Francisco true crime book, is that this is being made in the 50s and it finally gets finished, or mostly finished, in 1962, but it eerily foreshadows Jim Jones and Charles Manson. Like, Manson's got this rock and roll cult, and that's still a few years away, that whole thing. So
and Donald Trump. But this movie is so similar to the Andy Griffith one, Facing the Crowd. So like, who are they satirizing? Both of the, this was such a thing that people were parodying. Like, who were they basing it on? Was it Elvis? Were people saying Elvis is going to take over the world or something? Is that?
There was a lot of worry. That's the Andy Griffith one is about television, because you've got Elia Kazan, that's Facing the Crowd. These movie guys are worried about TV, but it's also like, Andy Griffith is this hick in Arkansas who strums a guitar, and he does these. Andy Griffith could sing and he could play guitar, but he's doing these terrible songs.
Tim Carey cannot sing or play guitar.
Yeah.
He can play one note very, very effectively.
And singing wise, he can beg very well.
Dude,
Please.
His gyrations are just fucking fantastic.
I fucking love this movie. This is probably in my top at least 20, but maybe 10 movies. Like, I just adore this movie. It cracks me up. I'm curious to know where it fits in the timeline, like knowing it was made in the 50s and finished in the 60s. like where it butts up against other movies like Face in the Crowd. I don't know which one got started earlier, but it is kind of like a neat thing that it is so prophetic in a weird way. You know, like there's definitely shades of Trump, and even though Trump has his own like very iconic hair, it's an attempt to create a Elvis Presley pompadour. Like I think people forget about the Elvis roots of that weird ass hair, which is only like it is because, you know, he's so fucking bald. They have to twist it up in a gigantically weird way to make it look like that. But to me, it's a weird genius that on some level knows that it's funny. God, there's that one scene where he's trying to get his inner circle. God Hilliard is trying to get his inner circle together, and he's saying, every man is a god, you know, every man is a god. And then one of his minions says, like, yes, I like what you're saying. No one is above anybody else. And we should make a rule that says no one shall be allowed to become a dictator. What do you think? And he just goes like,
Yeah. And then there's an awkward edit right after it.
For a long time. And it's so fucking funny. It almost is like going so far into like Tim and Eric style, like cringe comedy, like in a way, like it's anticipating even that, like the realness of that weird situation, the awkwardness of the editing. It has Cassavetes and it has Ed Wood. It has, you know, Scientology, cults, all kinds of things that are. I mean, I feel like Scientology has to be one of the things that is being referenced.
Yeah, I was going to ask
if
Tim Carey had to know who L. Ron Hubbard was. He had to, the way he's playing this character.
They mention other like cult leaders of the time. I forget which ones, but they were like, they come up in histories of Jonestown as being inspirations of them. I remember that. And I'm sorry I didn't take a note, but yeah, these things are on Tim Carey's mind. Now, Face in the Crowd came out in 1957, so Tim Carey is ripping off probably Face in the Crowd. Okay. But what he does is it is a more street level version of Face in the Crowd, because in Face in the Crowd, Andy Griffith gets whisked away to higher echelons fairly quickly, where Tim Carey's standing on the manure. And there's also that freaky riot scene. And I'm like, did they stage that riot, or is that a real riot that they just fucking filmed?
It's crazy looking. There's a lot of stock footage in this movie, like of the Democratic conventions and things that are just used as fake God Hilliard fans, right? Which is always really funny. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to look at that movie in 2022 and not think of January 6th. These movies like The Intruder, this movie also has that kind of message about how the cult leader can't control the crowd once it's whipped up, you know, like it's an uncontrollable force. And when you see Timothy Carey on the ground writhing with no shirt on, I can understand why. You know, I want to join up in arms and like smash a bowling alley as well.
Yeah, and he's like, if you look at the end credits, like everybody is a family member that worked on this.
that end credit sequence is incredible. It's so cool.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I love that.
It makes
the ending itself where he's.
Can you explain that? I don't understand the ending. Can you walk me through it?
So what I think has happened in the ending, and he spent this whole time being the strong god, all of this. He suffers one setback and just becomes this blubbering mess of a guy who's blubbering to his inner circle, and then finally, like basically demanding a miracle from God, back to believing in God, to just throwing everything away, and then stealing a communion wafer, asking for God to make it bleed, and it doesn't bleed. So he runs off and steals a like a cross or something. And then when he's coming back home, he's following an apparent trail of maple syrup or some kind of slime that he follows all the way upstairs. He opens the door, and there's in a flash of holy light, he is defeated. And it just ends so abruptly. There is no denouement. There is nothing. When God comes for you, that's that.
Got it. Okay. And then the sunshine was like, that's God's power. Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. I like it. Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch this movie. Now you convinced me, because I'm like, I don't need to sit through this again. But now I want to rewatch it through the lens of like a comedy almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
If they show it anywhere, like at LACMA or New Beverly or the Roxy in San Francisco, it will probably be his son holding the film cans under his arm who brings it in, because that's what when they show this movie. Yeah, Romeo Carey is the one who will bring it there. It's still that much of a do it yourself out of the trunk of a car kind of enterprise for the remaining Careys.
That's great. That's so awesome. I mean, just like you said, just that it exists, and it's made by a guy who loves movies so much that he used his money that he made from being in real movies to make this his own movie, which was
the realest movie.
The realest movie. Yeah, it was such a difficult feat to do back then, you know, and it's insane. So I admire that so much. It's really cool to see this existing.
My dad, Greg, we watched this together, and
this is important. Always let us know that. That's an important key to this whole puzzle.
We watched this together, and this morning he called me and was like, would you rather go on a date with Elvis or God Hilliard? And I'm like, is that even a choice? Would you rather date the King of Rock or an incel?
I was gonna say, would you rather be in the presence of an actor who portrayed having sex with 14-year-olds, or an actual man who did have sex with 14-year-olds?
Oh, okay. Well, now you put it that
way. Now, that being said, I'm sure Timothy Carey is like certified, maybe more certifiably insane than Elvis was, but maybe in a less toxic manner. I don't know. I really wanted to see Eddie Muller's intro to The Killers that I unfortunately missed, because apparently he talks a lot in the outro about Tim Carey and what a maniac he is.
Yeah, he did, like, on the set of One Eye Jacks, he not only drove Marlon Brando to stab him with a pencil, but also Carl Malden kicked him. You can kind of see Brando is like as crazy as Tim Carey in a way. He just is more controlled. So that's not as shocking, but like Carl Malden just kicking him hard with cowboy boots on. And Richard Widmark once beat him up on set. Like Widmark just wigged out at him and beat, like he would like... He is definitely a forerunner of Andy Kaufman, and he's just like driving people nuts. You hear about, like, you can picture like John Wayne hauling off and punching him, but he's driving these people you don't usually think of as like, you know, like Jack Palance is this kind of loose cannon kind of guy who, you know, them getting in a fight isn't as weird, but he's driving these kind of actors that we kind of see as respectable Oscar bait type guys all of a sudden.
Professionals, at least.
Yeah, just going, fuck this guy, I'm gonna beat the shit out of him.
And even God at the end was like, shut the fuck up.
It's kind of a virtuoso performance though. Like Tim Carey seems like it's like being in the room with Coltrane or something. Like we have this movie to watch it, but like I'd love to see him in a play or something in front of me, you know, like it's just so powerful of an actor, and that's very rare. I can't imagine like what audiences thought of Tim fucking Carey back then. No one got to see this movie back then, is that right?
How many prints are there? It's just like really being driven to a drive-in and like, here you go. It's not really ever,
but it had a rediscovery, and Scorsese I think was kind of a champion of the film, but this was all much later.
He calls it like one of the best rock and roll movies ever. It's in his like top 3 of rock. I don't know what the other 2 are. Maybe Hard Day's Night, maybe Jailhouse Rock or something. Or
it's interesting because of the Frank Zappa connection too. I mean, the Frank Zappa music in this movie is so good, and it sounds like Frank Zappa. It's crazy, and it's very, it sounds like later Frank Zappa. It's the same instrumentation. It's the same, and it's really, and it works well in this movie. But that's surprising that like there wasn't like, the Zappa fans are so fanatical that they didn't like pressure people to put this out or the soundtrack out or something like that.
Yeah.
One thing about Timothy Carey is like we could talk about the movies he's in, like The Killing and One-Eyed Jacks, and but he's in a lot of TV, so he will show up in an episode of Chips, which makes that the most surreal episode of Chips.
Wow.
And if you can find it, like if it's streaming, it's probably in the Peacock walled garden, but like the Columbo with Shatner also has Timothy Carey. And you never see, like, you could tell Peter Falk is about to lose his mind in the scene with, like, I think there might be a scene with both Shatner and Timothy Carey in it. And you can see that Peter Falk is trying to keep everybody on focus, and like his eyes are shiftier. Like, watch it with that in mind, like him trying to control those two. And that's like the ham level is through the roof already with Shatner in the room, but then you put Timothy Carey in there.
Well, they were homies. Tim Carey and Peter Falk and Cassavetes and Ben Gazzara, they're all super drinking buddies. So that would be a fun crew to hang out with, and act with.
Then the production values too, like you get that Cassavetes thing with like weird jump cuts and weird editing, and that half of the movie seems to be just taking place in a black void.
It has that thing that Faces has where it's like feels really jazzy. It has a jazzy rhythm to it, and it's like the cuts and like the close-ups of people's faces in black and white is like very reminiscent of Faces, which is considered super high art when this is considered
right.
More culture.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. Though. It's the same shit.
So, what kind of jazz cigarettes did you smoke with this?
I have no doubt in my mind that Timothy Carey was smoking jazz cigarettes during the production of this or with the writing of this. I think he was probably hanging out in LA. He had the cool jazz, pals, and they were smoking weed. So I was also smoking a sativa, because that's all you could get back then. I was smoking the classic sativa, Green Crack. Green Crack is known as Green Crush, Mango Crack, potent sativa marijuana. It has energizing effects. And this is a fuzzy, buzzy, crazy, high, weird energy movie. So I think it's good to be energized while you're smoking. So I smoked Green Crack and I liked it.
I was appreciating World's Greatest Sinner while I was also appreciating Blueberry Muffins, a shatter sativa. It was from the Lime Cannabis Company. And I thought it was totally fantastic. It was a great rocks on your head sativa that gets you in kind of a hyped up mood. And just hearing those like slightly out of tune band, just going fucking like at 10, and like it's just kind of dissonant, and to see that shuffle, like I was entranced. I was absolutely entranced, and this weed helped lift me up to that energy of what was going on screen.
I can concur. He was entranced.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
On the floor.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh my God." Well, I smoked. Again, I had a one Grande Guava joint. And then I was feeling at that time, I was like, I feel like this just isn't right. So I kept puffing on my Pineapple Express. I believe this is a hybrid Stizzy. But nice. Pineapple Express, this was working for me. Because, oh man, what a nuts... What a nuts movie.
World's Greatest Sinner is available from Amazon Prime for 99 cents extra, or you can buy a digital copy for $2.99. We don't usually recommend movies that aren't available as part of a streaming service or for free with ads, but this one, I think it's worth it. Greg thinks it's worth it. Yeah, it's 99 cents. It's worth 99 cents. So that's a wrap on our Elvis episode. Big thanks to Robert Lopez, aka Elvis, for stopping by. Next time, we'll have special guest Floyd Webb of the Blackness Network for the Afrofuturist weirdness of Top of the Heap, a film that he's helped rediscover, and the Anglo-futurist silliness of Queen of Outer Space with Zsa Zsa Gabor. You won't want to miss it on Old Movies for Young Stoners!
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so it begins with Baz Luhrmann's Elvis trailer, the first 15 seconds of it or so.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, it's at the beginning, so if YouTube hates me for using it, I can cut it off really easily.
Because it's Baz Luhrmann, it's like, let's get it started in here.